So one of the things that we're hearing from research when questions are asked of alphas and their families is that they believe that the church has become irrelevant. We're seeing them leave. We're seeing the empty chairs on a Sunday. Other things have gripped their priority list, and they are choosing to go to sports, visit with friends over coming to church. And one of the reasons they're saying is because they feel it is irrelevant. And I asked myself, how is it that that could be? We have the answer to all of life's questions. How is it possible that the church could be irrelevant? The problem is they are not seeing a connection with what we're teaching. They're not seeing a connection with that and their real lives. And we can protest and say, oh my God, that's just not right, but that isn't going to stop the hemorrhaging. Nearly 3 out of every 4 teens who have grown up in the church have quit going by the time they enter college. We've known that for a while, but unfortunately what's happening is that the age that they are leaving is becoming younger and younger. So we have a very short window of opportunity to impact these children for Jesus, and we must become relevant again. Irrelevance is defined as not having any importance or any connection with. And Barna's research tells us that a quarter of practicing millennial Christians believe that the church is irrelevant. Half of them say they know people who are tired of the same old church services, and 40% say they leave disappointed most of the time. What can we do about this? Well, the first thing we can do is we can update our strategy. Most of you, I'm sure, remember those McDonald's Happy Meals. I remember when our kids were young, my mom would come across from Australia and visit. And during the time that she was visiting with friends before she came to us, she would make sure that every lunchtime they would go to McDonald's and she would buy McDonald's Happy Meals. Why? Because inside that McDonald's Happy Meal was a toy. The meals have been the same for, decades. A junior burger, fries, and a drink. And she would have those for her lunch, but she would collect the Happy Meal toys. The interesting thing with Happy Meals is that while the meal stays the same, their toys rotate depending on what the culture is doing at the time. One time it could be a toy that has to do with the Minions or Super Mario Brothers or the Little Mermaid, depending on what was going on with Hollywood, basically. But the toy would change, the meals would stay the same. And while our Happy Meal, the Bible, should never change, our message should never change, the cultural aspects of our teaching need to change and keep up with what's going on in the real world. So we can't assume that our methods and strategies are still culturally applicable today. What worked well before isn't going to necessarily grab the attention of the kids today. They're growing up in a different culture at a different time, and they're different kids. So we need to re-examine our methodologies from time to time and update our strategies. The question is, are we willing to do that? Are we willing to take the time to evaluate where we're at and whether our McDonald's Happy Meal toy is up to date? We also need to address the hard questions that these kids are asking. If we're not answering their questions, if we're not relating our stories to real life experiences, then the conclusion will be that it's just not relevant. And I think what's happening is we're telling the stories, for example, the story of Noah, but we forget to relate it to real life. So instead of just talking about the ark and the smelly animals, ask them, how do you think Noah must have felt when the entire town stood and looked at him for weeks and weeks and laughed at him for what he was doing? That sounds a lot like bullying to me. How do you guys feel about that? Do you get bullied at school? Have you seen your friends be bullied at school? How does it make you feel? That story naturally moves into an application which these kids are definitely feeling in their own lives at school. But do we remember to go that extra step, or are we failing and just stopping at the actual Bible story? We need to move past these nice Bible stories and apply them to their actual lives. You tell the story of Esther, You can talk about how she stood up for what she believed, even to the point of death. And again, you can relate that to maybe children in their schools being willing to be brave and take a stand for what they believe. 29% of Alpha kids don't believe that a good God would allow all the evil and suffering in the world. Do we answer that question? Do we talk about why should we trust a God who allows wars and injustice and pain? 46% say that they need facts, and these kids need to know how to defend their faith. The entire world is indoctrinating them with a humanistic worldview, and then they're defending it. They're modeling that worldview. We can't just tell stories and stop at that. We must go beyond that and answer their questions. And you may feel that you're not qualified to answer some of the questions. These issues are wide-ranging: mental health, anxiety, bullying, loneliness, racial inequality, suicide, abortion, school shootings. There's so many issues nowadays, and yes, we're only one person, but there are videos on YouTube that we could use in our classrooms. We could bring experts in. We can find a way to address these issues, and we must answer these questions so that the accusation is not true. We need to be relevant. We know the answer. Jesus Christ is the answer, and we have to answer these difficult questions to prepare these kids for the onslaught that they're going to be facing as they grow up in this world. Let's become relevant again.
Grace for Kids.